Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Magic with Zuby. My name is Zuby, and if you're brand new to this show, the show is all about a little well-known podcast called Magic the Gathering. On today's episode, we brought on not one, but two people again for an awesome interview. I brought on DeQuan and Brian from the Magic podcast Color of MTG or Color of Magic, and brought them on. And this is going to be a first for this show here. We talked about some hard issues. Now, as you know, by the time this episode comes out, I don't know what the landscape's going to be like. It's actually coming out on my daughter's birthday, June 12th, so happy birthday, Zoe. And I needed to have a conversation like this. I mean, I'd already planned on bringing these two on the show. I've been wanting to bring them on for a while now, and it just so happened that by the time I finally reached out to them and wanted to bring them on the show, these protests happened in America over George Floyd and the murder of George Floyd, and it's been we talked about some hard truths on this week's episode, and if some people don't like it, I'm sorry. Stuff like this had to be said, and we had to talk about it. It's too big, too hard to ignore, especially with what's going on in the United States right now. So if you don't like this episode, I'm sorry. You feel free to skip it, but we had to discuss it. And there was some hard stuff we talked about in there that some people may not like, and I'm too bad. But anyways, so before we get on with the interview, Magic with Zuby can be found on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, and Spotify. You can find me on Twitter at Magic with Zuby, on Instagram at magic_with_Zuby, and you can email me with any questions you may have at mtgzuby@gmail.com. And we have two quick little ads to get out of the way here, and we will get on with our interview with DeQuan and Brian.
Well, hey there, Zoe. Why the long face there, chum?
I just want to order some magic cards, but the shipping was too expensive.
Too expensive? Well, did you know if you go to legitmtg.com, you can order any magic cards, and anything over $2 or more has free shipping?
Wow, free shipping's at legitmtg.com. That's amazing.
You heard that right, Zoe. Free shipping at legitmtg.com with any order over $2 or more. Be sure to visit today and get the best deal on Magic singles and Magic sealed product available.
Wow, that's amazing.
And that is how you beat the latest standard meta with Abzan.
Ugh, it feels like there's no Magic content out there for someone like me. Someone who doesn't want to be competitive. Someone who is...
Who is... a normie?
Yeah, exactly! A normie!
Well, have I got the show for you, the all-new Magic for Normies show.
Hi, I'm Pixie.
And I'm Zuby.
Together, we host the all-new
Magic for Normies.
It is the Magic the Gathering show for all your normie needs. We don't care what deck got into the top 8 or what deck is winning. We care about having fun playing Magic.
That's right, Pixie. You can watch us on Pixie's Twitch channel at twitch.tv/PixieKittenPlays and catch the VOD on our YouTube channel, Pixie Kitten Plays. If audio is your thing, you can find episodes on the Magic with Zuby RSS feed.
Magic for Normies.
All right, I'm recording here. So, hey, everybody, Zuby here, and I've got DeQuan and Brian from the Color of Magic podcast coming at me with tonight. And how are you two doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty well.
I'm good. It's been a whirlwind couple of days for me, but
you're doing excellent.
Yeah, otherwise I'm doing awesome.
It's been a whirlwind week, man. It's been crazy out there. I do have to ask, how is it going in your local areas? Because as most people know, there's protests and riots going on throughout the U.S. and especially after the murder of George Floyd. So I'm in Florida. I'm in Tampa. Tampa was definitely crazy on Saturday night. Some looting, rioting went on. How is it going over in your areas right now?
Here, Seattle's actually pretty rough. Seattle proper is pretty rough. All the areas around it have had some little protests that have been, for the most part, pretty docile, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
Though they have had some looters kind of come in late in the process or late in the day that have caused some problems. But for the most part, if you're outside of the heart of the city, it's been mostly okay.
That's good to hear. What about you,
Yeah,
Brian?
we're in the suburbs, but apparently they're expecting something because we just found out they closed their Walmart at 5 p.m. So it's serious if Walmart's closing.
Oh, dang. Dang. And I also got to ask, how's the pandemic going in your areas, too? I know, like, Washington was definitely hit hard early on during it, and I know Texas has been pretty locked down. Florida, people in Florida acted like nothing was happening at all. Well, for like 2 weeks, people took it seriously, and then, Florida man starts popping up and starts acting like nothing's happening again.
Well, I can tell you something that's really interesting. Something I actually read recently. Well, one, for starters, this area with the University of Washington had actually, in the past, done a lot of like flu studies and viral studies and whatever. So the administrations in the area were all better prepared and better educated, which has helped out a lot. So we were on lockdown real quick.
Yeah.
What's funny, though, is the reason they did it was because before they had more information about COVID, they were of the assumption that it might have to do with like some type of hereditary lines to make it easier to contract. So they actually thought, well, this is going to be awful if people start coming to visit their older relatives in these homes and they go home and take it, and then all their family's going to get it or whatever. Turned out that wasn't the case at all. But because we'd locked everything down, we actually saved people getting sick anyway.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
Does it seem to be easing up a little bit now, or?
I mean, we did hit a point where it was very low. I mean, when you consider that we were the first state in the country to actually have a COVID issue, and we weren't even ranked in like, I don't know, the top 15 anymore as far as like total contractions of the disease, we're actually doing pretty well.
That's good.
But we have had some people that have started to reach oh, wait, we're going to be in phase 2. Great. I can just run around without my mask on anymore or whatever. There's those people. So, yeah. But I will say the majority of the people here are doing a good job trying to really, I guess, structure their social activities, which is good.
Yeah.
I've talked to a lot of people that said, yeah, I'm probably just not going to organize anything that has more than 6 to 8 people, even if it's just over at my house for a board game. Multiple people are sharing information about how much exposure they've had because of either their job or, some other thing they're doing. And I think that's making everybody feel better in the area.
Yeah. No, it's I've got a buddy over in Washington, John Dunning. He used to do the 10th Street Hooligans podcast. I used to do it with him, and he works at a grocery store. I can't remember which one, or the name of it. It's not common here in Florida, but he told me like early on it was crazy, people going insane, but he said things are starting to die down a little bit at least, and I mean that's good to hear. What about over in Texas?
Well, like I said, we're back open, so I guess we'll find out in a week or so exactly whether we're headed for another wave or whether we've gotten through it. As of right now, I guess we're doing okay.
Yeah, especially after Memorial Day weekend. I know here in Florida, like the beaches were insane. I mean, typically it's the weekend. I like to go to the beach and all that, but nope, not this past weekend or the weekend before. With that, so I brought you on here because I want to talk about your guys' podcast, Color of Magic. It's been around. Has it been a year yet? Or
no?
Not
We're
quite.
at 34 episodes.
Yeah,
so
I knew it was in the 30s.
Like 7 months, I think.
7 months.
We've been doing them just about weekly. I think we've only missed 1 week. Right?
Okay.
Yeah, I believe that's right.
All right. So, what made you all want to start that podcast?
Oh man, actually, it was. I can't even remember if there was a particular catalyst or not. I think it was. I was just hitting a point where I just was ready to try a new project, but I'd done podcasting before actually. One of the things, and I think we mentioned this on the show, but I actually was part of the first Magic podcast 15 years ago. So I thought that was pretty fun at the time, and technology was infinitely worse than it is now. So yeah. I was like, you know what? This would probably be easier to do this second go round, but I didn't want to do something that everybody else was already doing, right? Because there's already good stuff. Like if you want to, if you're a limited player, limited resources, great podcast, right? Like if you're a competitive tournament player, Arena Deckless is a great podcast, right? So didn't want to do a lot of that stuff everybody else was already doing. I mean, and there's tons of others like Brainstorm Brewery if you're into like finance stuff or whatever. And I was like, what isn't really being done right now? And I really thought about it and said, well, we don't really have any that have people of color that are hosts regularly. And we don't have anybody really tackling any social issues around gaming on any of well, at least within the Magic sphere, any of the popular podcasts. So then I was just like, okay, I need somebody as a co-host, because I mean, as much as people tell me they like listening to me, that's only going to last so long. So I started thinking about like, who do I know who would actually be, and it turns out I was like, wait, Brian speaks in front of people. He's been a comedian. He's been a reporter. Like, this is right up his alley. So I just sent a message like, hey, dude, I have this idea. Like, how much are you prepared to get yelled at?
And again, as I said, I'm used to that. I've been yelled at for years now. It's kind of like the trilogy. He had a lot of ideas. We didn't have the technology to do them back then. Now the technology exists. We can go in there and remaster everything.
Nice.
But yeah, that was really kind of the catalyst for the whole thing. And I said, okay, cool. We talked about it, and we had, I don't know, that first conversation, we probably talked for about 2 hours.
Easily.
Of just, what are the things we could cover? How much hate do we expect to get? We know we're going to make people uncomfortable. What type of guests do we want to have on the show? Like, we wanted to have a full plan and kind of a roadmap before we went down the road, because we knew the content was going to be so different. And we also know that there's a ceiling to the number of people that are willing to listen to that type of content as well. So it wasn't like this thing we're getting into that we're going to get this and we're going to get popular and make all this money. It's like, our ceiling realistically, and right now we're between like 1,500 and 2,000 downloads an episode. Now on the lower side of that, because people are listening to fewer podcasts while we're at home. Go figure.
Yep.
But realistically, our ceiling, even if everything goes great, is probably only about 5,000 downloads an episode. And we know that, and that's okay.
I mean, that's still pretty decent when you come to think of it as Magic, though. I mean, when you like, just Magic in general is going to always have that kind of ceiling to begin with. But yeah, that to me, that's still good. I mean, shit, I'm going on 4 years and I'm lucky to crack 2,000 an episode. And it's, for being brand new, that's pretty good.
Well, the funny thing is we have a lot of listeners that aren't real heavy Magic players. Some are former Magic players. We have some that are just gamers. Some that are in the kind of like social workspace, or they're just trying to expand the profile of less visible people in gaming. So they're looking for other things to kind of network with. So I've had a lot of people just send messages of just like, man, I just found this because a friend recommended it to me, and this is great, And one person picked up Magic because they heard the podcast and were
that's awesome.
like, oh, well, the fact that people are at least trying to make these efforts in the game, make me feel more like I belong. So I'm in. And I was like, okay, cool. Yeah, that works too.
And it's funny how DeQuan always says, well, our reach probably, it's maybe only 2,000, might top out at 5,000. There aren't 5,000 people in the comedy clubs. This is still the biggest audience that I've ever gotten to talk to all at one time. But yeah, well, even with the newspaper, like, okay, let's say if 50,000 people read it, nobody reads every section. Some people only read the opinion page. Some people only read sports. Some people only read, the crank calls.
But let's be honest, when I say 5,000, like that's like the 4-year plan, like upper end of what we can probably read.
No, and that's still good. I mean, you guys are still pretty fairly new. You guys are coming up on a year, and it's good. It's good stuff. I've listened to a bunch of the episodes, and you two have a really good chemistry going on. And it's starting a new podcast. That's always tough. And I can remember listening to some of your first early episodes, and they sounded a little rough in the beginning, but you guys,
they definitely were.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, you go back, listen to Magic Zuby episode 1. It's completely different compared to now. But no, you guys have, especially the last episode I listened to, was the one with Tappy Toe Claws in it. And you guys sound like a whole new podcast when you compare it to the early ones. So it's been good. It's good stuff. So when you guys were saying that you were afraid or that you knew you were going to get hate, have you experienced any of that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think we talked about it on the show, what, 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, talking about the Reddit issue. Where we've posted stuff on Reddit. Matter of fact, this is how I knew, right? Because we did an episode that was about the Hunter Burt Memorial Open. For those who don't know, it's a big event that happens in the Dallas area every year. They raise money, and it always goes to a charity that supports suicide prevention and awareness. So, great cause, right? We had one of the operators on to talk about the event. We talked about its origin. We shared phone numbers for people. Here's resources. That's all the episode was. We didn't say anything about any people of color, no trans people, no women, no nothing. We were literally just talking about the cause of suicide prevention.
Yeah.
I watched that thread on Reddit get upvoted, then downvoted, upvoted, then downvoted, upvoted, downvoted. And I'm like, you're not even listening to this if you're downvoting it. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
It's just one of those things. So, like, yeah, it definitely happens.
Or, God forbid, maybe they are, and they're still seriously downvoting suicide awareness. I mean, that's what
then they're just awful humans.
Yeah.
So have you?
But there are awful humans out there. So,
I mean, besides the whole Reddit thing, has there been any like letters or anything sent to you guys or DMs?
I think I got one letter, one message today, or actually yesterday, I guess, in the middle of the ridiculous viral tweet I had, which that's a whole different conversation.
Yeah.
There was somebody, because I put out basically the preview of just like, hey, if y'all want an episode to share with your friends or gaming people about why some of the stuff is important in gaming, check out this week's episode. It's going to be a banger, right? And literally I had some people just like, why? Like, I'm like, what do you mean why? Like, like, why? Because my first thought is like, the fact that you're asking why is like, why are you even in my messages? Like, but yeah, so it happens, but it's definitely lesser than the praise we've gotten by a significant margin. I mean, we've had soldiers that have sent letters, that have been overseas. We've had individual store owners that have written us stuff, which has been cool. So yeah, we've gotten stuff from just a few different people. And it's not like a lot. I mean, we probably get the praise letters like, I don't know, once a month, once every 5 weeks, something like that. And we maybe have had 2 or 3 total angry messages. So it's all right.
Well, that's not bad. I mean, could be worse, but no, it's good to hear that praise that you guys are, affecting people, and you were saying you got people never even touched Magic before and gotten them to play, and, that speaks volumes. That says a lot. As far as, you brought up a good point where, I want to actually ask you, both of you actually, it's you, I see all the time that people are saying, I see it a lot in more of the D&D community where they want to raise people of color's voices, black people, trans people, all of them, to showcase their work. Why is that kind of stuff important?
I'll let you go first, Brian.
I think we talked about before we did this, just how few people we ran into early on that had the same hobby and understood even, on a basic level what we were talking about when we say Magic the Gathering. And then also feedback we got, from family and friends that are just like, well, black people don't do that. What are you doing? Why don't you play basketball or something like a normal black person? It's just, so we really wanted to just kind of, find other people that are passionate about it, because now thanks to social media, we know to some extent, how many of us are out there, and just all the great things that people are doing. I mean, some of the guests we've had have just been incredible, and people that are doing great things in terms of just cosplay, in terms of outreach, people that are, winning tournaments. It's just a whole wide spectrum of things that are happening out there, and we just want to make sure that people that want to know about it get to know about it.
Yeah, I would say, there's 2 components to it. The first, unfortunately, like a lot of things that have any type of like racial component or whatever in the country, they always start out some level on some systemic level. So even with Magic or D&D, a lot of it is just because, kind of like Brian says, a lot of that started at like high schools, college groups, whatever, and it was just a bunch of like 20-something white dudes that played, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's not even casting any disparaging remarks against white people. It's just like, that's just what happened when it happened. the rest of the time, black people are involved doing other things. But then it's like, okay, well, why can't we try this out? Why don't we pick that up? But then what you get when you talk to a lot of people is they're like, well, I kind of want to play this other thing because it doesn't look like I fit in with this other group. And, and I don't think that's even necessarily just because of the white people involved. I think it's just the visual representation, right? If you never see anybody that looks like you or nobody ever talking about things you relate to, you kind of start to go, well, is this something I really want to be involved in? And really, on the grand scheme of things, we should all want more people involved because that means Wizards of the Coast makes more money and they make more Magic and we get more events and we get more stuff on Arena or whatever. So it's really in all of our interest to spread that around for all of us. But really, at some point, and it feels weird saying this, but at some point somebody has to be the leader, in a way. Like somebody's got to go first. And we just decided to stick our neck out there and say, okay, cool. Because I've said before, we are not trying to be the voice of the voiceless or whatever, or we're not in a monolith where we all think the same and we're portraying that message. It's really just we are giving our own personal perspectives, how we see things, and that's one of the big reasons we talked about wanting to have guests on, because just because I'm black doesn't mean that some other black person is going to have the exact same experiences and they can talk about stuff from a different perspective. And it's also important, I think, for people to see that there are black people that are in charge or pushing other projects and helping them get visibility on it. Because one of the things we talk a lot about in the game industry is that a lot of times when people go look for content creators or whatever to help promote their charities or whatever their projects are, they don't often include people of color. So you have a large part of the gaming community that you're just not even reaching, that could be engaging with your product. There's other times which we ended up eventually getting a sponsorship deal with CardSphere, after they were on the show. But CardSphere is 2/3 minority owned, and nobody knows that. And just having those people to say, hey, look, no, you can support people of color, and there's people of color doing awesome things in the industry. You just don't know it. And we've had some people specifically say, like, it's awesome you had this person on. It's cool you invited this type of person. I didn't know who this was. I didn't know they had this product, So, and if anything, that's kind of been the hardest part for this most recent round of guests, as we have a lot of people that want to be on the show, but some of them I've kind of said, okay, do you have anything that you're involved with? Any groups you're supporting? Anything to promote? And a bunch of them are just like, well, no, but I think what you're doing is important. And, I've been a gamer for 10 years that's dealt with these issues. I'd like to be on. And I was like, okay, well, that's cool. But we have to have a very specific show where some of those people fit, unfortunately. And I do think there's something to gain by having people that can, I don't know if I want to say people with a platform, but maybe people just have more reach, that if we can put them out there, they can subsequently reach more people and they can draw more people into the Magic Circle or whatever. And I think all that plays into it. So there's a lot of angles kind of happening all at once with what we're doing.
No, that's good. That's really awesome to hear. That's I'm glad to hear, and it's spreading awareness. That's always something really good. The fact that you bring up a good point, the representation also. The closest thing I even really understand with that is I've got 2 daughters. So while I know it's not exactly the same, but I get it from that point of view, at least just wanting to have gender make sure be represented. And that it's good to know that you guys, I feel like you guys are doing some good work out there. We need more of that kind of stuff. And I get it what you mean by wanting to have a platform out there too, because you want to, it's sort of like a battle, right? You want to make sure everybody's stories are heard, but at the same time, you want to make sure you're getting the message as loud as you can out there.
But, it's also funny, when we talk about representation, to kind of give an example of how and why that matters. If you take little Dana Fisher, who's now crushing or was crushing Magic Fest Grand Prix when we had them, just her getting the exposure she is and people seeing that a young girl is playing Magic, like there have been other kids that come up to her at Grand Prix. There have been crazy people that talked to her dad and was like, "Oh man, I saw your kid. I saw the story. Like, I started teaching my kids how to play." So even something that small, it's not even about a particular demographic. Just like the more people you can include, the more people you can get exposure to, like that's some other part of the community that we're just not reaching by not telling that person's story.
No, that's great. It's great to hear. What do you guys have set in the future for your podcast? I mean, like I said, you guys are barely a year old, yet it's sort of really going well right now. What do you guys have in store? At least that you can spoil.
I want to get some money so I can buy a really fancy soundboard and have all the sounds. No, because we do play around with those in our show from time to time. But truthfully, I'm really now reaching out to seeing kind of like, as we get a little more exposure, can we get bigger guests on the show? Will people make time for us? Do people want to support it in different ways? Because like any project, when you start out, you kind of still have to prove yourself. Because people don't want to attach themselves to a product that's going to be dead in 4 months or whatever. Or, that you're just not that good. I mean, like, let's be real. There was a chance we could have done it, and we flub it, and nobody cares, and that would have been it. So I think now that we've reached that point, it's expanding the network and saying, okay, who else can we talk to? Can we bring in even people that are only fringe connected to Magic, so we can show people that there's these issues also in, I don't know, Hearthstone gaming or League of Legends or whatever it is, right? That these are bigger issues other than even what's just going on in your local store and with Magic players. And really just continuing to like tell that as we go along.
Hey, reach out to the D&D community because they're very vocal about that kind of stuff, and they do a good job trying to showcase a lot of that as well.
Oh, most definitely.
Yeah. Do either of you play D&D or anything as well as Magic? I mean, obviously Magic.
Funny as it is, I did run several D&D things for a while, partly because I ran a store, partly because I worked for Wizards for a while. And then now I taught or really explained things. My wife learned a lot from just watching one of the D&D shows. I can't remember which ones. But I went through, gave her my books, whatever. My wife now runs a D&D game that's all women.
Nice.
Oh, wow.
That's awesome.
So they do that once a week. I do have some D&D in my life.
I have not, and I want to, and just really haven't been able to pull aside the time yet with the various and then of course quarantine happened.
Dude, don't you have 3 kids? You have a D&D party in your house.
There you go. I've got both my kids in D&D. It's I've tried getting both my daughters know how to play Magic, but they really like playing D&D way more. They love the role playing of it. So yeah, you got 3 kids. There you go.
I tried a little role play a couple of years ago. Of course, maybe their attention spans are a little bit longer now, but that was Marvel role playing. So I figured, superheroes. Because I knew D&D was probably going to be a long shot, but I figured, hey, they love all the Avengers movies. They love the cartoons and the video games. So we tried Marvel role play, and that went south real fast. So
no, see, you sold
maybe
it
I'll
wrong.
try again here.
You got to sell it to them like Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
I don't think any of them has ever sat all the way through a Lord of the Rings movie. So
How old are they?
13, 12, and 9.
Oh, that's like some of the perfect ages to start role playing now.
Those are long movies, though.
Oh,
they
yeah.
are.
Oh, yeah.
I think they were 10 probably when the first one started.
Oh man, no, but that's awesome. So yeah, man. Sorry, lost my train of thought here. So let's talk about what's been happening the past week or so. What are you guys some of your thoughts on this?
Man, it's tough, because what part of the issues that I've been dealing with, just because I was helping people navigate a lot of things on social media, I knew some people that were, for lack of a better term right now, boots on the ground, doing stuff. And, I was relaying like messages and, hey, this is where stuff is and be careful and, kind of helping people stay safe. And it's tough because there's a lot of people that just like don't understand the cause first off, and I get it because if you're just disconnected from it and you never see it, like it's a hard thing, and it makes it easier for those people to work against the cause when you have the people kind of getting out of line, wanting to destroy things, wanting to loot things, and it just adds to it. Now, that being said, I did this morning even see a video where people were basically kneeling, and there was a good probably 20 yards between them and the police that were there. And he's just like telling them like, hey, I just want to see the best in people. Neither of us want this, blah, blah, whatever. And they walk over and just pull the dude out of line.
Wow.
And
Oh, wow.
that doesn't help. Like, that's the thing where it's like, hey, why doesn't that person get punished? And even this morning, I think they had the brother of Floyd was on there. He went to their memorial, and he even said, he was there with like his preacher and his lawyer and whatever. And he said, look, I don't even want you tearing places up. Like, that's not going to do any good. But at the same time, we're willing to give them peace if they give us justice, right? Like, the other 4 officers, why are they not being arrested? Like, not only did they stand there and watch this person die, they kept other people from actively preventing it.
Yeah.
And one of the stories is that the EMTs got there and were like, dude, you got to check this guy's vitals or whatever. And he got told no.
Oh, the
Now, I don't know how
EMT,
true that is.
the EMT got told no?
That's what I was told. I haven't verified
Okay.
that yet. But if it's gotten to that level, that's crazy,
Oh, wow.
But I get it. I mean, it's one of those things that kind of goes on all the time, and it does flow over to gaming in some ways. Not to that level where people are being violent, but a lot of that negativity, and we've talked about it a few times on the show where you kind of hear the snide side comment or whatever that's racially charged. And it's just unnecessary, because I think one of the things too, this came up on a friend's Facebook thing just yesterday. He was saying, he feels racist because he automatically sees somebody's skin color. And then he starts trying to help out or make assumptions based on their race or whatever. And I had to explain to him, it's like, none of this is about seeing somebody's skin color. Matter of fact, most people of color would prefer you see their skin color and acknowledge their history or their culture or whatever. The problem becomes when that person gets treated differently or less than or doesn't get the same opportunities or whatever because of their skin color. Like, and I told him, as long as you're treating people normal and equal, that's all most of the people want. That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'll work for things just as hard as the next person will. Anybody knows me knows that. But when I tell people the stories that, I genuinely was not rented a property because I was part of an interracial couple.
Wow.
I've had people, I've been charged. Matter of fact, I was part of a class action lawsuit where I was charged more for a loan from a bank because I was black.
Oh, shit.
Like, well, it was blacks and Hispanics in this particular case. So
Yeah.
don't want to single it out. But it's still a thing that happened. Like, there's a lot of these points in my life where those things happen. And I said, that's the problem. I said, that's when it's an issue. Somebody look at me and going like, oh, you're black, blah, blah, blah. Like, you've probably dealt with this, or maybe you know more about this thing than I do or whatever. That's fine. Even if it's a wrong assumption, I'm like, cool, I'll get over it, whatever. But when you tell me like I have a harder time getting a job because I'm black, like, and there's actually studies on that, by the way,
Oh,
that, and then one of the things we brought up is like, have you ever wondered why so many people that are of non-white cultures have very generic white-sounding names they go by until you get to know them, and then you find out their given name. And a large part of that is because it makes it easier on paperwork. And it was amazing how many people didn't know that.
Wow.
And I've done it myself, where I've used a family nickname that people have, I put down because it sounds kind of white sounding. I put it down on paperwork, and I've tested it and even put down, and this was even when I wasn't even looking for a job heavily. I put down a worse resume with the other name, purposely omitted important stuff or whatever, and the other name got more callbacks.
unbelievable. Well, I say unbelievable, but I absolutely believe it. So it's
And I've seen other tests where they've done the same thing. And I said, those are the things people are protesting.
Yeah.
It's not about just having more of a thing. It's like, no, I just want an equal chance to have the thing. And the same thing when we do our show and we're talking about gaming. It's just like, cool, let's give some of these other people the same amount of exposure. Some of these people are still winning tournaments. They're running game stores. They're awesome cosplayers. They're doing all these things but they're also not getting the same amount of appreciation. And then some of the people we point out, people are like, oh, it's awesome you had them on the show. I didn't know who they were or whatever. Now people are following them and sharing their stuff on social.
Oh, that's awesome. Brian, any words or?
I just to see this week where literally we're protesting, the murder of unarmed black people, and there are murders of unarmed black people during the protests. It's mind-boggling.
Yeah, didn't someone die yesterday or something?
Somebody today, I think I saw come across my timeline.
Oh, wow.
And I will tell you.
I'm sure you saw the case in Atlanta where the cops are pulling college students out of their car and tasing them, and you're thinking, okay.
Yeah, that was crazy.
I saw ingrained for some of these officers that they can't stop doing it for even, a week or two with the country on fire, basically.
I saw a crazy one, too. I shared it on Facebook or on Twitter where there was a black woman who was genuinely kneeling, had her hands up. Officer came by and yanked her off the ground.
Yeah,
and another black police officer or woman had to come over and get in his face. It was like giving him the business, and I'm like, even when you have a black coworker standing there, still like, dude, come on. Like,
I saw the one where they had a black guy on the ground and the officer was trying to give him a stick, and as soon as he got the stick in his hand, they just started beating him down. I'm just like, people.
I hadn't even seen that one.
Oh god. Oh, that'll get you riled up. Oh my god, it's insanity.
And speaking of riled up, I love that the NFL had the nerve to put out their generic.
Oh, I know.
The protest. Like, come on, Goodell.
Wait, what'd they say?
They put out
a
generic
support of supporting the protesters and nonviolent.
Hell up,
after what they did to Colin Kaepernick.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, of all things. But I will say this: the way this even carries over to gaming, though, when we talk about just being treated equally, I think I talked about this in like episode 3 or 4, where I went to for those of you who don't know, I actually owned a game store for about 16 years. So I got into the business when I was like 21. It's pretty crazy, fun story though. But I went to events, and I would generally have people where it's all business owners or managers, or for the most part, right? And they would ask you, oh, cool, what store is yours or whatever, and blah, blah, and casual conversation. And then they would ask me, well, who do you work for? And it's like the assumption that I wouldn't even be a business owner, to start with. Now, granted, I was one of, at the time, some of these I was the black person. Some of them I was one of two, But even then, it's like that stuff happens, that's the mentality some people are carrying.
Boy, go on back there and fetch the sheriff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, pretty much. And that's the thing. Like, you don't ever hear about it. You don't see it because that wasn't something I was just going to bring up because it doesn't matter to my customers. Like, they shouldn't have to deal with that when I get back to the store,
Yeah.
But knowing that I talked to friends, I'm like, oh, yeah, I want to do this thing with the city or whatever. And I just went and told them this and I signed some paperwork. Like, I go talk to them. I get the 3rd degree. So then from then on, every time I come with like the presentation of like, here's 5 pages explaining what we're going to do, how many people, how many days we need to set up, what our estimated costs are, whatever, to make something happen. Like, it's just not
me with white people.
Yeah, exactly.
So
that's the problem.
So I got a question for you guys, and I guess I just want to put it out there straight. Someone like me who's white, what can people like myself do to help? Especially not just this protest, but I guess all the injustice that's going on, right? What's someone like myself, and I'm sure a lot of other people out there, because you guys have all heard it before. I live in Florida, and it's no big surprise. It's a conservative state, and it's has history of racism, and hell, the town that I live in was known for lynching people back in the 50s and 60s and all that shit. And a lot of the people that I've talked to, and even I've got family members, when they hear the term white privilege, they automatically, they start the whole BS of, well, I had it hard growing up and, all that stuff. And, I don't need to repeat it to you. You guys know what I'm talking about here. So
Yeah.
what's someone like
Irish people had it just as bad as slaves. I've heard that so many times.
No, but what's someone like myself? What can I do to help you all out? Or, you know, or not just myself, but just other people who out there may be listening.
I would say, okay, first thing I think is, or I guess I have 4 things. So Brian, you want to go first? Because I got things.
You DeQuan to have a whole list of things prepared. I would say if you go to a candidate forum or, you know, or you engage with your senator or congressman, and by the way, if you don't do that, please start doing that, I guess would be the first thing I would say. But when they start trotting out, you know, the tried and true talking points, I mean, just ask them some serious questions about what their plan is to address things such as police brutality, income inequality, and affirmative action and things like that.
Okay.
Like, my first thing would be get people to understand the idea of white privilege, right? It's not about you not having a struggle. Because there are several white people who have serious struggles. I mean, I knew white people who grew up in trailer parks or had drugs at home or abusive parents or whatever. Like, that can totally happen to anybody. And I think it's just one of those cases where we have chosen the word privilege and people attach a certain definition to that. But the reality is kind of like what we're talking about, where you don't have to worry about your ethnic sounding name preventing you from getting a job. You know, you're not going to have people question you being in a relationship because your skin color is different. You know, you're not going to go to an industry event and people question your status as a business owner. You know, I generally had people walk into my game store and be mad, want to talk to the owner, and I'm like, cool, I'm the person. And they're like, well, no, I want to talk to somebody else. You know, like, you don't have to deal with that. Like, that's the definition of privilege. Like, it's saying if another non-white person is put in the majority of situations that a normal white person would be put in, it's going to be easier for you. Not saying that it's going to be smooth sailing and you don't have to try or whatever. It's just, if all things being equal, you're going to have the easier road. And then we can talk about examples or whatever. But it's just getting people to understand that point of the whole thing. I think that's the biggest issue. The other I would say is, don't be afraid to call people out on stuff. You know, we've talked about it on our show. Even for us, it may not be a racial thing, but like when I see guys saying dumb things about women, or, you know, trying to say something stupid or like disparage a woman for no reason, like, jump in and say something. Just don't let them be idiots. You know, say, dude, that's not right. Or like, how would you feel if this scenario happened to you? Or what makes you think this? Or like in our case, it's like, dude, what if that was your mom and your sister? You know, like, call people out on their stupidity. When you share some number of traits, or you share the group with the person committing the faux pas or atrocity, and you call them out, it's going to have more weight than the person they're already attacking. Because they're just going to look at the other person getting defensive or not taking the joke right, or, I don't know, being a snowflake, whatever it is they want to call them, right? Like, but if it's somebody that they relate to, it has way, way, way more impact. Like, I think that's probably the next biggest thing. And then the other is just support people of color, right? If you want to help, truly support them. Like, don't, I mean, I tell people, like, believe me, I have a whole segment planned for our show that we're going to record this week. But really, it's like, you know, you say you want to support these people, but what are you doing? You know, it's like, you could easily go retweet somebody's cool project they're working on Twitter. Or if somebody just won a thing, or somebody's put up a big announcement, like, go post it on Facebook for people to see. Or, you know, in our case, like you're doing now, you're inviting us on your podcast. And the same thing for us. If we would have used our platform only for people of color, like, we would have missed the opportunity to have certain women we've had on, or trans people we've had on, right? Like, if we're going to be an ally, then cool, open the door and be a true ally. But it feels like a lot of times people are looking for this just giant thing they can do. And it's like, no, sometimes you just need to do the level 1 and 2 stuff. Like, that has an impact, and it's not even asking you to push yourself hard.
So basically, the
like-
little stuff.
Yeah, that'd probably be my list of things.
Yeah. We've talked about on the show how we've seen people host, diversity panels at events, and it's all, 6 able, straight, white dudes. We support diversity. Do you?
Oh man, I saw one of those, and that
Couldn't
just blew my
find
mind.
anybody different for the panel.
Like, the thing that got me is you didn't even have a woman, much less a person of
Yeah.
color. I was like, what are you doing? And I'll tell you this: when I was at Wizards, we did a diversity speaking panel for MomoCon, actually in Atlanta, and it was me, one of the guys. It was an Asian guy, a bisexual white woman, and just a cis white guy. And a couple people asked, like, well, why did you just have a cis white dude on the panel? And I said specifically because he can still speak to things he's doing to stand up for his gaming friends and to make it easier for us. Like, that opinion mattered too. So we got about the most diverse group we could think of to go speak to these people, just so different perspectives could be heard. And it had an impact. Like, people, now I will say it was one of the only moderately attended panels, but because they were streaming it, we did get a lot of people who sent messages and stuff afterwards talking about how happy they were we did it.
Okay. How long ago was that?
That was 2 years ago, I believe.
2 years ago? Okay, cool.
Yeah, either 2 or 2.5 years. It's been a little bit.
So you used to work at Wizards?
I did.
Where did you, or what did you do there?
I was in their trade marketing department. So in that department, it's basically all the stuff that goes or deals with the retail stores.
Okay.
As far as the stuff that's marketed to them. So all your promos, your in-store materials. My team was in charge of, I was one of the ones that led the charge to getting WER, so it actually worked. So I did that while I was there. My team, I think we talked about it last week or the week before, but my team was actually one of the groups that came up with the idea to allow people to buy product at pre-release. So that's a thing you get to do now. You're welcome.
Oh, thank God.
But I will tell you, oh man, that's a whole different show. Never mind. But I will just tell you that was quite an endeavor. So when people say that people at Wizards don't care, totally not true. That's probably the biggest fallacy in the game community, or at least in the Magic community. That people will say oh, nobody at Wizards cares. They're just worried about making their money. They're just doing whatever Hasbro says. I can tell you, almost to a person, there might have been 5 people there that I ran into that were just punching in, doing the job, going home.
Yeah.
But most of the people there genuinely are concerned about what they're doing. And I can tell you, one of the first real private meetings I had, this was probably the second week I was there, third week I was there. It was me, one of the representatives from the distribution team, somebody from customer relations, and then there was somebody else in there. But we literally had a loud, we weren't angry, but we were all animated. We had stuff on the whiteboard, and and we were erasing stuff. Well, we can't do this because of this reason, or this is going to be bad, or I got to do this to make sure distributors are happy. Well, I got to do this to make sure the stores are happy. But when we got done, we were cool. Some of us got what we want, some of us didn't.
Yeah.
But we all felt that everything was heard. Everybody's points came out. All the sides of the business we were supposed to work toward got represented. And we went on about our business. And I still talk to them today. We're still friends, but which is funny because some people saw us come out of the room. They're like, oh God, are y'all okay? What happened? Yeah. But that's the level of passion people carry, though, that they care about this stuff.
Should be those conversations, if you're serious about the conversations, they're not always going to be comfortable.
Yeah.
Sure.
Got to have them.
What's the saying when you're negotiating? A good negotiation is both people leaving a little uncomfortable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
My boss at one of the papers I worked at would always say that if everybody is ticked off at you, you're probably doing your job. If both sides are equally upset, you're probably covering it accurately. And same thing for my job. People will say oh, well, everybody in the media is super liberal. Haha, no. That is, to my experience, has never been the case. There are people in every newsroom, virtually all ends of the political spectrum. There are people who don't have any political affiliation. There are people like DeQuan that just come in there. It's their job. They punch the clock. They go home to their family, and it's and they don't have a dog in either fight. Essentially, it's their patient.
And there's no big bad corporation controlling what you can and can't say.
It's usually not even a corporation, especially in a small town. It's probably one guy. The last paper I worked at, it was one guy.
No, but
he was not liberal at all.
No, but you know what I mean. All those conspiracies of, like the deep state liberal papers or whatever the hell they're. I don't know.
Well, when people start talking about that, I tell them there is an Illuminati. It's called Congress. They're all
Congress and lobbyists.
White, and for the most part, they're all rich. There's no secret about that. These are the people that run the world. They're old, they're rich, they're white, and again, there's nothing going on behind the curtain. This is out in front of you and openly. You just have to vote and pay attention to it.
The big ass corporations and lobbyists and Congress and yep.
Well,
they don't hide.
Not to diverge too far, but I think that was one of the biggest wins I think in the last midterms is that a large percentage of the people who won seats more than any other time weren't from these large political families. They weren't from these places that had lots of money. They were people who paid to put themselves through school. They were single parents, whatever. And they were winning these offices. They were representatives of the LGBT community. It was the first time I think we'd had that much diversity in a midterm election for people to get elected. Because I've said for years,
right.
One of the biggest problems we have with, especially in DC, one of the biggest problems we have is if you go look, most of those people are already rich before they even get into office. Most of them haven't paid for themselves to go to school. Most of them never even, them or their kids have gone to public school. Yet we have them helping make the rules for what people are going to deal with in public schools.
And they're career politicians too, as well.
Or lawyers. We have very few educators. We have very few small business owners. We have very few doctors, very few farmers. It's like, and we're making rules that affect all these people, but we don't have anybody invested in any of those things. And again, that's just another form of representation. It doesn't always have to be about race or age or whatever. There's so many different ways you could represent people across the country, and we're just not doing a good job of it.
Yeah. And I want to say, I don't care if you've been in office for 30 years, provided you're doing a good job and you're staying in touch, with the populace. The problem is when you're in office for 30 years and nobody can get you on the phone. Nobody can reach you by email, and that's where things become problematic. When you just said, I've known senators where, like, even I, as a reporter, would have a hard time trying to get them to pin them down and get a quote from them. I can't imagine what the everyday person trying to get an issue resolved would have to do, because most people kind of somewhat pay attention to the media. I won't say most, but a lot of them.
Brings up a lot of good points. It's especially so you said you're a news reporter. What are you are you currently a news reporter right now?
I'm not currently with a paper. I currently am doing, obviously, the podcast. I have a YouTube channel. I'm doing a lot of things on Twitch, and I still do a little bit. I've got, like DeQuan, I've got about 15, 16 projects spinning at any given time. But I'm always, when news breaks, I try to fix it, as we like to say.
So what are you doing on Twitch and YouTube as well?
YouTube, I have, it's a lot of gaming. Then some of it is just random things like reviews of new soda flavors or gamer snacks that are out. Twitch, I do primarily Madden, but really any game that comes across that I think, hey, nobody's done anything like that before, I'll try to play it and just get some attention on it. Any kind of strategy game, I absolutely love it. So that's one of my soft spots, to try to play any kind of new, different tactical strategy game that comes out there.
Fan of StarCraft at all?
My son is a huge fan. I have just really only played it a couple of times. Jordan is an expert at StarCraft at this point.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. So, getting back to these protests here, especially this past weekend, we saw definitely a lot of heated protests this past weekend. As someone who, not that I just see on Facebook, but also as someone personally, it's like, I want to go out and protest, but I'm personally scared, and I'm more scared of the police more than anything. There hasn't been anything locally going on in my town for protests. It's all in Tampa because I live right north of Tampa, and as we saw this past weekend, Tampa is pretty crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, the freaking I think it was a cop yesterday, or I'm getting my days mixed up. I think it was yesterday, who right before the curfew they enacted, he started shooting rubber bullets at people and tear gassing right even before the whole curfew. And that honestly scares me, because I got a wife and kid to think about. Wife and kids, I should say. So what's someone who maybe is afraid to go protest, what can they do to help support these protesters out there?
I will say, well, first off, let me say there is nothing wrong with being afraid to be involved in a protest. People are for different reasons. I think it was maybe late last night or this morning, Cedric Phillips was called out because he said specifically, hey, this is going on near me. There's already this much action. I don't feel safe going out there because of these reasons. And then somebody tried to call him out for supporting protesters and this, that, and the other, and not going out there. And I was like, dude, are you aware that black people are dying by cops? And a black dude's telling you the cops are already getting wild. I don't want to be out there. But he's still in line. He's sharing content. He's using his platform as basically a celebrity in the Magic and gaming community to do extra outreach. He's connecting people with different things. He's still being active, even though he's not out there. You can share the posts like I was doing yesterday. I wasn't one of the boots on the ground, but I knew multiple people who were listening to police radio, people that were offering safe houses effectively if you just needed to get off the streets for a while. So I was constantly connecting people. I'm like, hey, do you know this person? Cool. Here's their address. Go here. Awesome. Hey, this person just said this thing was going on this corner. You may want to stay away from there on your way home. Just helping people stay safe. That's a thing you can do. You don't have to be in the mix of it. The only thing I will say is if you are a white person or specifically or a non-black person, in these protests, you do have to be prepared to put yourself between them and the police. Because that's the biggest barrier of showing other people no, hey, I'm in support of you. I understand this is wrong. If the police are going to do something cool, then make them attack me and we'll make a thing out of it. Yeah. And I'm not saying everybody's cut out for that. I'm saying everybody should do it. I'm just saying if you're going to be there, be prepared for that.
Brian,
and if you're fortunate enough to still live in a city that has a major newspaper, please, you don't have to subscribe. Please just keep your eyes open. Follow what's going on in your community. That's not just for police. That's for because I think there's a tendency for a lot of people to follow national politics. At least most people hopefully know who Trump and or Joe Biden are, but there are so many people who don't know who their council person is, or who their senator is, or who their mayor. And those are the people that are making the laws that affect you day to day. That's who's hiring your police chief. Exactly. That's who's hiring police officers. And so many people wouldn't know their leaders if they walked up to them in the street.
Oh, I'm surprised how many people don't even know their state governor, especially right now when they're giving orders about, the stay-at-home stuff and everything else.
That's scary.
It's how do you not know?
Not surprising. I mean, and you're right. You make a really good point, Brian. It's knowing who your local leaders are, because they're the ones hiring the cops. They're the ones hiring the sheriffs and the chief of police. And I mean, Trump's not the one going around hiring all the cops, but you're right. You want to see change, do it at a local level, and then, work on state and then federal. And it's, that makes perfect sense right there.
Yeah,
and
more
again,
often
I know
than
it's
not.
harder because so many newspapers and even small to medium range communities are going away, or even the larger papers are having to cut their staffs down to almost nothing. But there are a whole lot of citizen journalists out there on places like YouTube and various and
Facebook,
Huffington Post, and other sites. Yeah, Facebook. That's what's good and bad about journalism now is that anybody with $50 and a website can start their own news endeavor.
That's true. And if that's even news. But You know, I think you're right to bring that up because I think people don't realize like they'll go out every 4 years and vote when it's a major presidential election, not realizing that every couple of years like you're voting on a bunch of other offices.
Yes.
And a good example right now is especially for us in the Northwest or the West Coast is like sure Trump is saying whatever he wants about COVID or whatever, and but you know what? We have Oregon, Washington, and California. Their governors are basically just working together, saying like, "F that. We know what's going on in our backyard. We're going to play it this way and keep everybody safe." So sure, you vote for president. He does do some things, but on a day-to-day basis right now, Governor Inslee is making a lot of the rules and laws for us.
Yeah.
God, I haven't even heard from Governor DeSantis the past few days here in Florida. I don't even know what the hell he's up to. I haven't seen anything in the news because I've been trying to watch the local news. I mean, the mayor of Tampa, she's been kicking ass, taking names, and doing the best that I feel she knows how to do. But makes a really good point. I mean, hell, Governor DeSantis was all there, during COVID and all this stuff, allowing stuff to open up early. But I've heard like not even a peep from him during these protests.
And
Yeah, that's
as
tough.
somebody that prides myself in trying to keep up with this stuff, even when I go down, our local election ballot, there seem like there's 500 judges.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And judges are like referees. If they're doing the job right, you don't generally hear anything.
Yep.
But when one of them messes up and lets a kid out of jail because he had affluenza, that's what you hear about.
Oh, hey, speaking of, that reminds me. Like one, I brought this up earlier today that man, I have now lived in a place where you get mail-in ballots and a place where you don't have it. And man, mail-in ballots are just the straight shiz for real. They are awesome. Like
Preach.
they come in the mail like 3-4 weeks early. They have the pamphlet, or I guess it's a little booklet actually, that tells you about all the people on the ballot. Like you don't have to do any extra research. You don't even need stamps. You just fill it out, sign it, goes right back in the mail. You are good to go. Like
Yeah,
they
this
have
is gonna
a bunch
be
of
my-
drop-off points around town.
This is going to
Oh.
be my first year doing mail-in ballots because I've always done early voting, but I've just decided I don't know how it is in Washington or Texas, but you can go to the state website or whatever, and they give you an option of what elections do you want to do mail-in ballots for, and I just chose them all, every single
Oh,
one.
dude. It's so easy. Like if you're in Washington, Oregon, I think Colorado, and one other state, it's just automatic. If you're a registered voter, they just send it to everybody.
That's great.
Oh,
Yeah,
dang,
it's awesome.
that's
Because when I
That's
moved
way
here,
better.
one of my first thoughts was like, well, where do we have to go to vote since we live here? I don't even know what district we're in or whatever. And then literally like 2 days later, a thing showed up in the mail, and I was like, oh, this is how we do it here. This is awesome.
oh dang, I gotta do that at least once a year to do mail-in ballots. So, but
Also, there's a good video that John Oliver put out this past week because he does Last Week Tonight, and
Yeah.
he's always on point. But he does share some good facts as to all these people saying that there's so much mail fraud and this, that, and the other. Like, it's literally less than 1/4%. Like, there's almost no fraud at all in these things. Plus, the steps you have to go through to commit the fraud would be insane.
I'd be more afraid of Florida losing my ballot more than anything. Than...
Well, yeah,
Definitely.
that's a real thing. Like, that
People
could
in Florida
happen.
not being able to figure it out. It's always,
Oh
There's-
man.
there's Chads hanging off of this envelope somehow. I don't understand.
But I'm just saying, if you want to get more people to vote, you want to make sure more people have access, I would push for that in whatever state you're in if you don't have it. It is awesome.
That assumes that the leaders in your state want more people to vote, which unfortunately is not always the case.
Well, that's a different problem.
No, that's awesome, guys. No, you all brought up a lot of good points, and I love it. Thank you. It's been great. So let's if you don't mind, we can shift things a little bit more lighthearted. Let's actually start talking about a little bit about Magic. DeQuan, you just had probably a really awesome weekend in terms of Magic this past weekend. You won a little bit of money.
I did.
Describe what were you playing, and what you kind of went through to win that money. And
Yeah, so I was really kind of deciding. I already knew I was going to play the Arena Open, just because I'd been preaching to people that even though I don't like Best of One, I totally understand why it exists, right? Because One, it's the most popular way for people to play Magic. Like, casual players don't play with sideboards. I mean, I can tell you for a fact, I saw it in my store. I see it when I go to other people's stores. Like, people just bring their deck and they just play games of Magic. They don't have sideboards, right? So it makes sense that Wizards wants to make it as accessible to the maximum number of people. And it's okay. Not every single thing is going to be for all of us. I don't even like best of one, but whatever. I wanted the event to succeed. The other thing is that this is the first time I could think of where a major game company has basically had a big cash prize pool for their customers that wasn't gatekept in any way.
Yeah, and it was literally anyone could sign up, right?
Yeah, because it doesn't matter if you play Magic or Hearthstone or CSGO or League of Legends or StarCraft or whatever. Like, to get into the actual money, you have to qualify in some way. You have to finish in a ranking somewhere. You got like, there was some other prerequisite, right? This is the first time that literally any person who had the Arena account could sign up and have a shot at the money. Now, skill notwithstanding, that's a different issue, but you at least had the opportunity. At this point, it was like a poker tournament, right? Like, you get the entry fee, you have a shot at it like everybody else. And that was awesome. And the majority of people were going to play free, I'm pretty sure, at least the first time, because I had 80,000 gold in my account. I could have shot 4 bullets if I wanted to.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I only needed 1 because I got a little bit lucky, but
He's just that good.
I wouldn't say that. Like, day 1, I chose to play Neoform Winota.
Gross.
Yeah. No, it totally was. No, believe me, I am not proud. Trust me.
I mean, hey, it's sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do.
Yeah,
There's
but I will
money
say
on the
this.
line.
I did make some adjustments to the decks to kind of offset the thing about not having a sideboard.
Yeah.
So I added a couple like incubation druids or whatever to kind of offset weird draws in case I'm on the draw and I can keep the mana correct. And there's like some little things I made a decision on that actually ended up paying off, which were pretty cool. So I went 7-2 on day 1. So I like had my 1 loss to give, but got there. And then on day 2, as funny as it is, now this is a whole separate story. This is what I was talking about at the beginning of the podcast, that I ended up helping people with all this stuff going on, protest wise and whatever. So I was just distracted most of the day. Matter of fact, we were supposed to do this podcast recording on that day. And I was like, dude, I'm just so busy. And then I realized like, oh crap, I still have day 2 of the open I haven't even like addressed yet. And that's going to take at least 2 or 3 hours. And at this point I have 3 hours and 18 minutes left. Or no, I had 3 hours and like 28 minutes because I fired up the stream and I decided I was going to stream with everybody. So got that set up, started when I had 3 hours, 18 minutes left. I finished with 8 minutes remaining.
Oh, damn. That's awesome.
But I did go 7-1 playing Gruul. Managed to beat, I believe it was 4 Yorion decks along, or no, 5 actually Yorion decks along the way.
Gross.
And the crazy part, playing Gruul, I did that, and I was only on the play, I'm pretty sure, in 2 matches.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome. It was a hell of a run. And I started out 1-1, so I had to win the next 6.
Oh, because you could only get 2 losses in day 2?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Ooh, that's scary.
Fun. Matter of fact, that video is rendering right now, so by the time this goes live, it'll probably be up on my YouTube page.
Master of promotion, folks.
It's a long video because I put it up, to be fair, I put it up just raw. I didn't edit much of it. I did like a 2-minute intro and that was it. I just put up the footage because the other part of the news is before I decided to play the open, one of the things from a conversation we were having, I posted on Twitter and Facebook and a couple other groups like, hey, when was the first time you had a black teacher? Because there were some discussions we're having and believing this has some amount of social impact for there being a lack of black teachers. But I wasn't sure, so I wanted to just like ask my group. And I'm assuming I'm going to get like 100 responses or so.
Yeah.
Well, when I'm done with the stream, because at this point it's been about 4 hours, because I did some giveaways for some codes or whatever and hung out for a bit. Well, when I get back on Twitter, there are 34,000 responses to this question. And I was just like, oh my God, what happened? Like, I'm like trending on Twitter. I've got people blowing up my YouTube page. Like, I'm like, what's happening? Like, my phone's just like notifications just going off. I'm like,
battery's dying.
yeah, I'm like, what the hell? Like, when did this happen? Like, it's not like I was gone that long, So I spent a large chunk of the night dealing with that. But hey, I'm about to hit 1,000 subscribers on YouTube soon.
That's awesome.
So yeah, it's a crazy, crazy couple of days. It has been wild. But the event was fun. I will say there were some good players that actually didn't finish in the cash. I saw that day one, Sperling was struggling a bit. I think he eventually got on like his 5th try or something.
Wow.
Crokies made day 2, and he ended up like 2-2, I think. He didn't
Oh,
finish in the
damn.
money. Yeah, some people that like are great. So, I understood. I got a little lucky for sure. But I think it had a lot to do with deck choice, because if you watch my streams or even my YouTube channel, like I have several times I've been playing different versions of Gruul and almost hard targeting the Orient decks. And that was kind of one of the things that made my decision. I was like, okay, with just a little bit of time left, I need to play something I already know, even though it may not be the best choice. I need to play something I already know I can make the right decisions fairly quickly, just to save myself time. And fortunately, it worked out, as I had 8 minutes left, so I didn't have a lot of time to spare.
Oh no, that's awesome to hear, man. That's awesome. So when do you so how does that all work? So you won $2,000. Where does that money go? Like, do they send it straight to your bank account or
So what it is, they just sent an email today. So you send them your DCI number, email address, name, and something else.
DCI
And
number?
then-
I thought those don't
Yeah.
exist.
Yeah, what's that?
It's not tracked, but it still exists for the time being till
Yeah.
we're completely on the new system.
Yeah.
But they then send you the information using that to confirm an iPay account. And then
Oh,
you'll
okay.
deposit the money there, and then you do whatever you want after that.
Okay, that makes sense.
So I'm assuming most people will probably be paid, assuming you responded them quickly with your information, probably be paid within a week or two, I would guess. And it saves them a lot of time instead of having to deal with all the postage and checks
Yeah.
getting returned, people having the wrong address,
Be a lot easier,
all that
yeah.
stuff.
That's awesome. Well, what about you, Brian? How long have you been playing Magic for?
Oh goodness, I think I want to say I started around 2002, 2003, somewhere in that area.
Would that have been like what, Nemesis Onslaught or?
I believe so. Which I think, we're talking about this, how, in comparison to DeQuan, we'll have guests where they'll start talking about the old days, and they mean literally like the old days, back, in ancient times. And I feel like a total new person. Then we'll have a guest that we had a guest that had just picked up the game a year or so before, and then I feel like the old person in the room. So it's
No,
just,
I know what you mean.
the perspective is weird. But
It's
yeah.
funny you talk about the before time, but I realize I've been playing so long. I tell people things from the beginning of Magic, and they think I'm just making stuff up because it's like so unbelievable.
You
Oh.
kids, you don't understand back in the day.
I think the most recent thing I told somebody, like the way because nobody knew the rules and there weren't judges, right? So it's like, well, the only thing you could do if you wanted a rules question answered, as you had to get the little junky rule book that came in your little like size
Yep.
starter box, the little
Yep.
black and white thing. You had to call the long distance number to Renton, Washington, and you asked them a rules question.
Oh
Like,
my God, I forgot about
because
that.
nobody else knew. That's what you had to do during business hours, mind you. So if it was after, you just had to guess.
Oh my gosh, I forgot about that. I started in Urza Saga, and I always love telling this story. We never had a game store here, so it was the only way you could buy Magic was at this sports card shop, and just had a small little display. And I remember the thing that was so valuable between all my friends was the least thing you'd ever think about would be basic
Oh, it was
lands.
a Shivan Dragon.
No. The most valuable thing were basic lands. We'd have to trade
okay.
basic lands with each other because he didn't have
Yeah.
he didn't have any starter decks or anything like that. That wasn't until like 2 years later. And we we would buy a whole bunch of booster packs and just trade basic lands with each other to be able to get decks or pretend, oh, this plains is an island or forest or
Yeah.
something. And
I
There's a
actually know
lesson about
somebody-
the economy there somewhere.
I know somebody that wrote on a dual land at the time because they needed another swamp.
wow, if only they
that-
knew.
Yeah, exactly. Now they basically deface like $200, but
Now, when you speak about playing with new players and all that, Pixie Kitten, we do the podcast Magic for Normies, and one of the segments that we're actually working on doing is called OK Boomer Cards, where since she's only been playing for about 2 years, I'm going to showcase her a whole bunch of weird ass wacky old cards. And one of the ones that I found that I completely forgot about, do any of you remember the card Raging Ravine?
I do.
Oh my god.
Do you know that one, Brian?
Believe I do. That
No, not
sounds.
Raging River. Sorry, I
Yeah, I
thought it
know
was.
what you meant. The
Yeah,
one where you have to split the creatures on either side of the river and decide
yeah.
which ones you're blocking or whatever.
Oh my
Oh,
god.
I completely forgot about that card, but it'll be cards like that that'll just blow her mind. And the other card that I love showing to newer players is a Scornful Egotist, who never played during Scourge or anything. They see an 8 mana 1/1, and they're like, "Why? Why does this even exist?"
What happened? What happened?
Oh
Well,
man,
Magic cards were weird back in the day. They were either like super powerful or you just never wanted to play them. That's sort of what it felt like a lot of the time.
yeah, yeah. It was yeah. And I loved. A lot of the art today is good and all that. Don't get me wrong, but I love some of that old school art too, where you'd have God, some of it was just gross and disgusting back then too, just really creepy art, and it's a lot of it is. I mean, the ones who really stand out nowadays would be Seb McKinnon with his crazy art that he's
Sure.
got. But man, you look at some of the I'd have to find some of the cards. Some of the older stuff was crazy, but a lot of it feels a lot of homogenized now. And speaking with some of the artists that I have before on the podcast, like Noah Bradley, they say a lot of that's intentional now because they
It
have all
is.
these art directors and
Yeah.
they need a certain theme for it for whatever set
Yeah,
they're going to work on.
for every set, there's actually a style guide that's produced.
Yeah, style
So
guide. Yeah,
everybody knows exactly like what type of monsters live there, what do they look like, what is the terrain like, what is the weather like, how do
which
the
makes
people dress.
sense. It makes sense
And
now.
then anything you make, you're welcome to do, but like as long as it fits that structure or motif. And the biggest reason something like that, I know, and I'm on the fence about it, whether I like it or not, but the biggest reason stuff like that exists is for marketing purposes.
Yeah,
You know, that if they put together an ad campaign or they have somebody do, like say like those beautiful online trailers they've been doing for the last 3 or 4 sets, right? You
hmm
can't make one of those and represent the artwork in the cards if it's all different. You know, 'cause
yeah, yeah.
you have to be able to tell the programmers like, hey, this is what this looks like, this is what the background of the story is, you know, and then they can do that. And then when you start putting up posters or web ads or whatever, it all like clicks in people's head that these are all the same thing. You know,
That makes
but
too much sense, and I get it. I still like the.
I know, I feel you. I feel you.
I liked it. Especially pre-internet days when a new set came out and all the weird, wacky art that you'd see, and I kind of miss those days of blissful.
Want to hear another
ignorance.
crazy early story?
Sure.
This was around. This would have been the Tempest pre-release, I think.
Okay.
We were actually the morning of driving to the pre-release. We had somebody actually print off the set list because nobody had it, but they had a pre-release technically the day before because of the way
Mhm.
time works in like Germany, and they had emailed it to one of us. So we were trying to learn the
damn.
cards in the car on the
Oh,
like
wow.
hour and a half, hour and 40-minute drive to the pre-release. Because again, we didn't even have in-store pre-releases. You had to drive to like your area's regional pre-release or whatever, and where there's going to be like 300 people or whatever it was.
So did you do well during that pre-release? Do you remember?
We did, and I totally misplayed a propaganda, thinking it worked for both people for some reason in one round, and that cost me from getting the big prize.
Wow.
Oh damn! What were the prizes back then?
They were usually just like the top four, whatever, would get like a box or a box and a half or
Oh,
something,
okay.
and some other stuff. It wasn't crazy.
Pretty similar to what most people have today now. Then.
Yeah, now a lot of people do like 2 packs per win or maybe like 3 packs per win. Like top spot gets like 10 or 12
Yeah.
boosters. They made it a lot flatter, and I think that's actually good. I think anytime you're not playing for high stakes, the prize support should be flatter so more people go home with something. Because I think that's how you build bigger events in the future.
Yeah, that makes sense. So are you both? I mean, obviously, DeQuan, you just won some money in Arena, but do both of you consider yourselves competitive Magic players? Do you?
I absolutely am not a competitive player.
I call myself a has-been Magic player. I formerly have played on the Pro Tour twice. I've played in regionals once. I feel like I still probably could. I just don't necessarily want to dedicate the time to it. I have more time,
Yeah.
more fun like trying these different decks for YouTube and making the YouTube content, or helping people put together cool ideas or create something fun. Like, I'm engaging with the game a lot of different ways. You know, I'm doing interviews with like game store owners and stuff like that are still beneficial to the community, but not necessarily just playing the same deck and perfecting it over and over. Unless it's a Gruul deck and money's coming up, then that's a little different. But
Yeah, you might have just come out of retirement with the past weekend's events.
well, you know, the fact that they're making it easy for us to play, because I can just roll out of the bed and throw on a robe and try to win $2,000. I don't have to drive anywhere. That's awesome.
I know, right? And it's not Magic Online. That's another plus, too.
Yes.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I tell people, like, it is unfortunate if you are heavily invested in Magic Online. But I always felt like at some point we knew there was going to be something else. Now, granted, that something else came like 14 years later or whatever. But, I mean, just the way it's built, I mean, it's effectively Magic on spreadsheets. You know what I mean?
Pretty much, yeah.
It's not good. And the programming, the way it's built, is there's only so much you can do to adjust it or add to it now. Like, it's layers and layers and layers of code that have been rewritten, adjusted, connected to other programs. Like, there's just so much on the back end. And because it's older technology, it can't work with a lot of new stuff if they wanted to. Like, you can't put a Unity engine on Magic Online.
They
Like,
literally have to build a new program, which Arena, essentially.
You would spend more money and resources and programmers doing that than you would just building a new platform.
I've invested a fair amount, but I don't ever want to go back to Magic Online.
I don't either.
I've sold out 3 times in Magic Online, and my hopefully third is the last time.
I still have a pre-beta account of Magic Online.
Oh, dang.
So I've had stuff on it. Because when Magic Online, again, here's another boomer story. Like, when Magic Online first came out, I'm pretty sure the initial group were Wizards employees, players that had participated in high-level events, I think like Nationals, Pro Tours, whatever, and some other third group. I want to say maybe judges or something, but those are the people that did like the initial testing and whatnot before it opened to beta, and then everybody had access to it.
Oh, wow.
Picture it, Sicily, 1942.
Yeah, exactly. It's something like that. Yep.
Oh, man.
I'm telling you, man, there's a lot of crazy old stories. I have like tons of them.
No, it's great. I love hearing those kind of stories. It's
My
great.
old stories go back to like 2010, so it's not quite.
Hey, that's considered old for a Magic player nowadays, especially when you look at the landscape of content creators. Jeez, there's so many new ones coming. I have no idea who's who anymore. Like, I feel like before Arena went into beta, the sort of open beta before it was open beta when they invited 5 million people, I had a good handle of who the majority of the content creators are, and now I don't know who anybody is anymore. It's so tough to.
You know what I want to say, and this is rough because I feel so bad saying this, but I think it needs to be said, is that some content creators, you got to step your game up, y'all. Like, there's a lot of people that I have, because even before I started streaming, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to literally spend time researching. I'm going to watch a bunch of other people stream. And I did that for about 3 weeks.
Yeah.
For like watching, literally just sitting down, rotating between channels, watching people for like 15 minutes at a time. Like on Twitch, there's people that literally are just sitting there playing music and just clicking buttons. And I'm just like, why would anybody stop to watch you? Like, what's going on? And then crazy, there was one dude.
They're partnered.
No, yeah, but there was one dude, he was sitting there, this guy had like 100 people watching him. So I'm like, okay, this guy must be doing something right. He is literally sitting there smoking a cigarette. Occasionally, like, maybe like once every 2 or 3 minutes he would say something. But then otherwise he's just playing Arena. And I'm like, how does this dude get 100 people to watch him? Like, and then my other thought was, could this dude have like 800 people watching him if he actually was doing something? You know?
Yeah, how do you get 100 people to begin with?
Exactly.
Well, was he also? I mean, we also don't know like how long was he streaming? Like, did it take him a long time to get up to that? And maybe it was an off night he was having or something.
It could also been somebody just raided him and just dropped like 200 people on him. That's what
that too. That too.
But the other thing too is when you're going through YouTube, there's a lot of Magic content, and what
so much with Arena out now.
Yeah, for the new people coming on board, like, what are you doing to make yourself stand out?
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you're trying to reach 1,000 subs and at least, and the 4,000 hours watched to get monetized. Like, what's your plan to get there? Because if you're just going to get on and just, one, not even show your face or anything, you're just voiceover on somebody playing Arena, well, I could just go watch somebody like Merchant or CGB or whatever that at least has personality. If I'm going to do something and I'm engaging with a person. And
Yeah.
why wouldn't I do that? Because if you look at mine, like I've made it a point to specifically, like I've got an intro, I've got transitions. I make sure to make sure I am largely visibly present on most of them, like the beginning and the end,
Yeah.
just so people are seeing me, they're engaging with me, like they're seeing a person of color. Like I am doing something to make my content stand out from other people. And it's funny because I've had a lot of people say exactly that. Just, oh man, your production level is really high and whatever. And truthfully, a lot of it's actually pretty cheap and it's easy to get to do. I'm not gonna lie. Like I just did research and found ways to get stuff done because I am not the person to build those type of transitions or whatever. But found a place that could do some stuff for me, and I spent like $60 and I got everything I needed. So
No, I know what you mean. I've gotten compliments on my audio quality for my podcast, and they're like, "Oh, what'd you do? Do you know audio engineering?" I'm like, "Nope, I just Googled a bunch of stuff and figured it out until to me it sounded decent." I mean, that's half the battle too. Is you want to make things look good, production stuff. Google it. There's 5 million guides out there for that stuff, and
the thing that blows me away is before anybody starts any of these projects, they do so little research. Like I have so many people that come up to me because they're seeing me having success ahead of where they are, and I'm like 6 or 8 months behind them. And they're like, "Dude, how did this happen? Or where'd you get this?" Or how? I'm like, "Dude, I literally watched a YouTube video or I read an article. Like this is like literally you search that actual topic, that's number 2 that comes up. Like what have you been doing? Like
oh yeah, that's something that a lot of people don't realize. Not just the research, but so I've been doing podcasting for over 4 years now. Love it. Probably just like you, I didn't think I was going to go anywhere with it, and I've had a lot of opportunities with Channel Fireball. Gotten preview cards from Wizards. I just had Gavin on last week, which is I can't wait to release that episode. And it's I feel like I've accomplished a lot with it, but what I never realized going into this, and I think a lot of people don't realize, is there's so much behind the scenes work that people don't see, and it's the record this part right here. This is the easy and fun part. It's all the stuff after the fact. Because I don't do a whole lot of video editing and I've gotten my audio editing down pretty packed to where it takes me, as long as I don't have to do any major overhaul to it, I'm like done within a half hour and all that.
Okay.
But it's people don't see all the behind the scenes stuff and I think that's what a lot of people don't realize getting into this, and maybe that's why a lot of people quit because they're like, oh, why don't I have success right away? It's like it's not easy. It's not easy.
The figure we found when we started was something like, I think they said 60,000 or 600,000, some big number of new podcasts were going to debut on the iTunes store that year. And something like it was some small number. Only like 30% of them even make it to like their 5th episode. And I think it's exactly that.
That's
people
crazy.
were like, oh, I'm going to get on, I'm going to interview some people, I'm going to talk about this thing I like to talk about. Not realizing it's like, oh, I have to promote it, and I have to remember to do this, and I got to edit it, and I got to find guests, or I got to find sponsors, I got to do whatever. And it's like, yeah, if you're going to do it right, there's things you're going to have to do. Like, there's a lot of work to everything. Believe me, some of the craziest thing is when you're putting up YouTube videos, and I'm like gauging, okay, this is only at 12%, still going to take another 20 minutes to load. Can I edit the podcast and the time that's going to get there's a lot of time management that goes on to be efficient.
Oh yeah, and especially when you're juggling a full-time career at the same time and a family and kids and trying to do this content creation. It's thank God my wife is so understanding of me wanting to do this, and there was a point last year where I thought I was done because I'd just hit a really low point. Depression really overtook me and just a lot of personal stuff going on, and she's one of the ones who kept telling me just go back and do it because it makes you happy. I'm like all right, and now it's to a point, and I'm sure at some point I'm gonna stop this, right? It's not gonna go on forever, but
Sure.
you know, I love doing this. Like, I love coming on, bringing people like you guys, talking about, you know, some hard issues to bring up, and talking about some fun stuff as well too. You know, and I love this, and I love interviewing other podcasters because I like getting into your guys' minds and see what you're doing and what you're bringing to the table as well too.
You know, I love that you mentioned that, because I think one of the things I'd like to say to people is that y'all need to be easier on content creators. Like, I've literally seen people, like, people are just like, oh, well, I didn't come here to see pictures of your pies. I came here because you put Magic deck list up. And it's like, wait, so the person can only ever talk about one thing ever, or not make a post?
Yeah.
Like,
Yes.
like what the
Exactly.
hell? You know? Like, that's just an insane thing. Like, I talked to some people who they were trying to be competitive video gamers, right?
Yeah.
And some of these people, not the particular people I talked to, but some of their friends have, you know, 10,000 subscribers, or some of these huge, ridiculous numbers on Twitch. They actually are afraid to go to a competitive tournament to play the thing they stream, because they're going to lose some like 5% of their subscribers or followers, because they're not going to have content up for 4 days while they're at the event.
Yeah.
Like, that's insane to me. Like, they literally come to watch you play that thing that you're good at. But the fact that you're going to go to an event to do the thing you're good at, they're going to penalize you for it. I'm like, what is the logic?
You're not allowed to have a life outside of content creation is the logic. The logic is illogical, but the machine doesn't care.
And you'll see people that they will get mad when, like, even some of these big names, they'll be like, hey, look, today I'm just not feeling it. I'm kind of sick, or I'm not mentally into it. I'm just not going to stream today, guys. And they'll get 4 or 5 hate posts. You know, I'm just like,
yeah, that and when someone goes outside of their content, like I do like a side companion podcast, RPG companion, that's mainly about D&D and RPGs and all that. I take my time doing those episodes. They come out maybe once every other month because I research it, you know, really, really focus on it, and I barely get anything, and no one ever responds. It unless it's YouTube. For whatever reason, my RPG YouTube videos go bonkers compared to my Magic ones. But yeah, I've gotten hate on that, like, you know, stick with Magic and all that stuff, and it's like, but I love D&D also, you know, I want to share my love for that, but I take my time and really work on that compared to Magic, to where I do mainly interviews now, so I'm just like, I can just push these out, you know, one after the other with these.
Yeah, and I enjoy making Magic decks and putting that up, but anybody who follows my channel on YouTube knows that, like, it'll be interlaced with, like, hey, here's a cool product or service I ran across, and I'm just going to do a review because I think it's beneficial to you to know about, right? Yeah. So that might be the video that day, or it's going to be an interview with the store owner. Like, I did a couple recently with store owners from different parts of the country talking about how the whole COVID issue affected their business, what they've done in the meantime, what their future plans are, you know, just to give people perspective on what's going on in the game industry. You know, and there's still people that are like, well, I'll just wait till you put your next deck video up or whatever. You know,
yeah.
Like,
I know what you mean. I just had 2 lovely ladies up in Canada tap that MTG. They're a smaller YouTube channel, but I didn't know that they also owned a game store. And so a lot of the conversation turned to talking about their game store up in Canada and how they've been dealing with it, you know, during the pandemic. And it's been interesting to hear from store owners, like, how are you all handling it? Especially someone outside the US too, because here in America, we don't see what's exactly going on outside of our own, you know, states, essentially. Yeah. And seeing, you know, how's Canada handling it, you know?
Yeah, and also, speaking of game stores, one of the things I started doing was doing a series of videos to tell people, like, hey, here's some things you need to do if you want to run a successful store, as far as, like, even getting set up and your initial business plan, things like that. Because people, once they find out I've owned a game store, like 5 or 6 times a year, I get messages saying, like, hey, I want to do a store, blah, 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 what should I do, and whatever. I'm like, well, first thing is, you're not prepared, so I'm going to tell you not to do it, but you're not going to listen, so here's some other things, right?
And you get rich owning a game store, right? It's a real
1
way.
in 10. But I try to explain to it, like, it got to the point where I'm like, you know what if I just made this a series of videos? So if somebody asks, there's at least a resource already there. I can say, just go watch this. And it's been pretty good so far. Like, I've had a few people actually watch them. Other game industry people have watched them and said, signed off on them and said, yep, this makes sense, whatever. So and now it did hit a roadblock because those combined with my game store interviews, I had a whole series of people I was going to be talking to, but obviously I can't go visit their stores and do things anymore. Locations I was going to shoot at, so that kind of wrecked that a little bit. But in the meantime, I've gotten better with editing and learned some more things to do with my camera, so when I get back to it, they might be a lot better.
Yeah, I've been I think during this whole lockdown, I've been playing more paper Magic than ever the past couple months, and that's due to spelltable.com, playing Commander online. Do either of you play Commander?
I do.
What about you, Brian?
I have played it before, not as much recently, but I definitely want to get back into it. And sounds like Spelltable is something I need to check out, apparently.
Oh my, yes, please check it out. I'm not sponsored by them or anything, but I've been. I'll admit I have a little bit hard time streaming Magic Arena. I like the game. I like Magic Arena. It just doesn't feel the same at all. Like, it's not the Magic I grew up playing and loving. It's great that, hey, if I wake up at 3 a.m. and I want to go play some games of Magic, boom, I can just play a few quick best-of-one games and get off, and I'm done. Spelltable, it was called Virtual EDH before, but Spelltable, now I'm streaming it about 3 times a week, playing paper EDH, and it's the most fun I've had with Magic in a long time.
Yeah, isn't that the program they're going to use for the Magic or Command Fest?
Yep.
I think it is. Yeah.
Yep.
Also, by the way, did you see that package they have for the Command Fest?
No.
It's like $99.
Are you talking about the Magic Fest in a box?
Yeah, I think that's what it is.
Where it comes like the Soul Ring, the Path of Exile, and
yeah, I actually get 4 Soul Rings. You get the foil one and then 3 non-foil ones. God. Then you get the full set of Path to Exiles. You get like 10 other promos.
Yeah,
you get a playmat of your choice from like the last year, I think.
And I'm trying to reduce the amount of Magic I have. It's like, fuck, I don't want to.
I feel you, but the value in those things.
I know.
Why would I got to get one of these, right? Like, even if I don't want it, I got to get one, right? I think that's where it's at.
It's that FOMO. It's that FOMO's real. It's like I didn't even want all 5 of the Commander 2020 decks yet. I bought them all. I'm like, fuck.
But here's the thing. I will say this about Commander decks.
Really game.
No, I'll say this about Commander decks. I don't think any of them have ever not like nearly doubled in price.
They all have. It's
because each one of them has some 5 to 12 cards that like you're just not going to find anywhere else.
Yep.
So if anybody wants one, like, okay, you automatically over the course of the next year and a half, 2 years, well, those cards are all like $5 and $10 cards.
Yep. And if you don't get it now, then you are gonna miss out for the most part. And it's that freaking, it's real. That FOMO is real, man.
I'm telling you, those are about the safest thing you can buy Magic wise, I think.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I think it's one of the best newer player products, especially for players that are wanting to dive into Commander.
Right. Most definitely.
It's even so. When we did the pre-con stream, we just did a pre-con stream 2 weeks ago for all the Commander 2020 decks. They're all straight out of the box, all of them really good. I'd probably say, God, I don't know. Maybe the teamer ones might be like the weakest, but that's like barely the weakest.
Yeah, where you're splitting, getting nitpicky.
Yeah. But no, they were all great, and I've loved all of them. So are any of you doing the Command Fest this coming weekend?
I was thinking about it. Like, I mean,
I'm tempted.
I don't know.
I'm tempted.
Exactly. That's sort of the way I feel about it. I just came off of playing a full weekend of Magic plus dealing with all this other stuff. So I'm kind of like, do I want to just take the weekend off and maybe just shoot something minimal for YouTube? Like, I don't know yet. I'm really
He's walking around with the belt, just flossing, looking very.
Oh no! See, that's the real thing. Like, I will say that. Like, if there was a championship belt, I might get back into being competitive. Like, if I could like walk up and make the like belt symbol, old school wrestler style. Like,
get some theme music playing when you walk in.
Because I will say, of all the things I've done Magic-wise, and I've done a lot in the Magic industry, all except for maybe work for a distributor. I think I've done just about everything else. I've worked for a game manufacturer. I've written for magazines and websites. I've done podcasts. I've run events, whatever. I've competed on the Pro Tour. Like, I've actually never won a trophy at an event. I've won tournaments and I've won cash, but I've never won a trophy from an event.
So maybe Brian, that's what you need to do for DeQuan here. Make him a little trophy for winning the Arena Open.
Oh, I'll get the kids right on that. Wow.
I've won fantasy football trophies, and I don't own a Magic trophy.
Oh, dang.
Oh, God. Here we go with the fantasy football trophies.
Oh, man. So,
oh, yeah, Brian's in our league. I got 2 of them. Brian's got one, though, right? Like, you get one? Yeah, you got one championship.
So I'm not super into football, but I'm like, as you can tell, I love baseball and all that. But that's one thing I've never, ever, as much as I love D&D and RPGs, you'd think I'd probably like fantasy baseball or something like that. Never, ever tried it. Here's the
problem. Like, when we're talking about fantasy sports, like, baseball is the most difficult of them.
Oh, really?
Because you have to know all the pitcher rotations. You got to know who the relief pitchers are. You got to know what days of the week, because some days they're playing double or triple headers. You got to have all that figured in. And then there's
my boys, the Rays. I know all of them.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm saying. But then there's also
left-handed pitching.
Yep. But then there's also like, okay, what is my league scoring? Are we doing singles, doubles, triples, home runs, steals? Is batting average matter? Is on base percentage matter?
See, this is where I get where I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about, like because I've never done a fantasy sports before, so I don't even know how it even works.
Yeah, basically, it's your league determines how much each thing is worth in that sport. Okay. So, like, for simple math, it might be like singles are worth 1, doubles are worth 2, triples are worth 3. Yeah. And steals might be worth like 4 or whatever. However, your league determines it, and then you're trying to have the best score each week, whether you're playing head-to-head or you're playing against a group of people within the league or your division or whatever. And then at the end of the season, whoever scored the highest consistently goes into your playoff or whatever and does it against the other high scorers. The problem, though, like, the reason fantasy football is one of the biggest fantasy sports is it's effectively a once-a-week thing.
Yeah,
I mean,
there's
you do
only
have,
like
Thursday games or Monday games,
yeah.
But mostly you're setting your roster like once a week unless there's a last-minute injury or something. That's mostly it.
And it's only, 14, 15 games, something like that before playoffs?
Games.
16 games before playoffs?
Well, yeah, most leagues you actually do like 14 or 15 weeks.
Yeah.
And then start your playoffs as the teams are going into the real playoffs. But yeah, it's definitely, I think that's the thing that makes fantasy football like so popular. Because you can do any type of variant you want, but people still only have to set up a roster once a week. Whereas like baseball, fantasy baseball and fantasy basketball, like you have to, fantasy basketball is easier, but you still have to check it every day because randomly a player decides they're going to sit a player because he's played like 3 nights in a row or whatever. And you're like, oh crap, I got to get that dude out of my lineup or whatever it is.
Or he got arrested again.
Well, yeah, that's true. That has happened before, but that was the thing.
Oh, damn.
So just like weird things like that. But, with football, you generally know if somebody's injured or not or whatever on like Tuesday or Wednesday. So you're like, okay, I'll just watch this player and that's it. If no news, then I just leave my roster alone. But yeah, I did fantasy baseball once, and I was like, man, I'd have to be heavily invested or playing for some real stakes for me to do it again because it was a lot of work for a season.
Well, I mean,
and now because of the pandemic, people are playing they're playing the Korean League fantasy baseball, and I saw that. The invite. I figured that was just I'm going to click on this. It's going to go to a chat room and be like, this is an intervention for your gambling habit, is where I figured that. Korean League baseball.
But no, actually, yeah.
I love baseball.
Not so much fantasy leagues, but as much as the daily fantasy with like DraftKings and whatever the other one is. Like, they're doing that for sure. But they've been trying to take bets on damn near anything. They've been looking at a lot of the esports leagues.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
So people can get their gamble on.
That's awesome. So, DeQuan, are you working full time, or is like content your sort of thing right now? Because you said you don't own the store anymore, right? You said
no. Actually, okay. Here's the funny thing. COVID was actually awkwardly placed for me perfectly to be both great and terrible. which is pretty
Ooh.
funny. But I was actually between jobs, and I had a bunch of interviews coming up, which they're all in the area, different like state jobs, government jobs,
Mm-hmm.
and all moved on to like the hiring manager level. I'm one of like 1 to 3 people they're interviewing for each of these. And then COVID happened. And they all sent messages saying, well, we still are interested, but we don't know when we're going to be back in the office, and we don't know who's going to be at the interview.
Yeah.
So it was like, well, all right, I get it. Nothing you can do about it. Coincidentally, there is a local office here that has a bunch of people working for home that I've still interviewed with them a bunch. Went through, did all their tests and whatever. And I'm supposed to find out here in the next, I guess, like 2 to 4 weeks. But, government jobs, they take a while. But in the meantime, it's been perfect because I've just used the downtime to just double down on YouTube, Twitch. Because one of the things I told myself is if I'm going to have this much time, then I need to use it. I know a lot of people talk about trying to be successful, trying to do a thing. It's like, but to do that, sometimes you also have to seize opportunities. So you may be at home, furloughed or whatever for the time being. Like, if there's something you want to do it. Like, I talk to so many people, they're like, well, I wouldn't know how to start. I'm like, but have you done anything to start? Like, have you bought anything? Have you read any articles? Have you watched any videos? I'm like, well, no. Then when are you going to start? Because you're never going to have this much free time ever again as an adult in the United States.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I mean, even though I've been working full time throughout the thing, like March, April, I'm in healthcare, and I'm in more of a elective field of healthcare, radiology, and radiology definitely went down a lot during March and April.
Sure.
And so I had a crap ton of free time. So it's not only did and my boss was, and I'm freaking out. My boss, thank God, I love my boss. He told me, like, he's like, Zuby, just calm down. You're not going anywhere. You're not getting fired. Go play video games or work on something else. I'm like, okay. Because I'm so used to that mentality of I gotta work. And whenever there's any like downtime, I'm like, oh crap, I'm not working. What's going on?
Dude, I feel you. I am very much that. I always tell people, like, even if I retire, I'll be doing some charity work or something or whatever. Yeah. I don't think I'll actually be like truly retired. But
oh no, I know what you mean.
But yeah, I'm with you totally. And that's sort of where that mentality came from. It's just, while I'm here, let me do something and let me make it productive. So my thought was, if I could race to get my YouTube channel monetized in time, then that'll just be bonus money whenever everything goes back to normal. So,
dude, I've been streaming more. I've been doing like I said, doing the paper EDH. I'm like this close to getting my first Twitch payout, I've been affiliated with Twitch for years now, but I never ever did anything with it because I just never cared enough to stream or anything. And now with this, I'm having so much fun streaming EDH, and I'm about to get paid out probably any day now, and I'm probably just gonna put that money back into this podcast and stuff. It's
Yeah, I've done that. That's one of the big things. I think it's good you said that. Anybody who's thinking about getting into content creation, that would probably be my first advice. Either save it or reinvest it into your project. Don't go spend it. Like, that's the wrong, like, that's really,
it's so easy to want to go buy like shiny new toys and all that stuff.
Yeah, because you want to celebrate, right? You finally got your thing. But your choices really are reinvest it. If you're not going to reinvest it, save it. Then don't spend it, because this is bonus money for you. You either put it in the project to try to make the project better to make more money, or just save it. Don't waste it, because truthfully, especially with content creation, you can have a huge month, and the next month could be a quarter of that.
Yep.
And
that's what scares me with like people who go full time with content creation. I mean, kudos to them who can do it. I couldn't do it. I need that stability of paycheck to paycheck and all that. I couldn't imagine.
But you know what though? The people that do it, they treat it like an 8 to 5. They're doing 4 to 5 days a week. They're doing 6 to 8 hours.
Like Professor Tulare Community College. I don't know if you ever talked with him. He treats it exactly like a job and just bangs out video after video and all that. I had him on the podcast a couple of years ago, and I was asking about that stuff. It's crazy. He's a work machine when it comes to that.
You have to though. Like, that's how and you get your sponsors. You sell merchandise.
Mm-hmm.
You have affiliate programs. You're doing whatever just so you have multiple streams. of revenue. Like even now, I have somebody. Actually, it's funny. They just popped up just as I said that. I have an artist actually working on some T-shirt designs. So because I had a couple people ask them like, because people were like, "Hey, do you have anything you sell or whatever?" And I was like, "Not really, because I'm not that big yet." But I was like, "Hey, if y'all want merch, F it, I'll sell you a couple T-shirts." So great. And I'll tell you one thing that's been awesome for me is because of the time I stream. I stream 9 p.m. to midnight Pacific time. So it's usually after a lot of the US has gone to sleep.
Yeah.
But what's awesome is I get a lot of Aussies and Kiwis and stuff and some Germans that get on my stream. And they've been super supportive. So as things have started to grow, like they've been like they're like the greeters in my channel and everything else. Like it's awesome.
Oh, that's what I love doing with the best streams that I've noticed that I've had personally is the ones I do Saturday morning, because just like you, I'll get a lot of people from Australia, especially the UK as well too, and just a lot of them, and it's awesome. It's still I don't want to say weirds me out, but it's still weird that, you know, someone like on the other side of the world is want to watch me play Magic and do very badly at it. And
But here's the thing though, and this is what, again, this was from like my research early on when I was looking at when is everybody streaming. I'm like, well, if I get on at prime time for us, which, you know, 7 to 10, I'm like, well, there's a crap ton of people already streaming. Like,
Yeah.
why would you want to stop and watch me when you could watch like Seth, or you could watch Andrea, or you could watch like whatever. They're all streaming in that window, right? Like, why? What? But if I'm on later, then I get all the people that are already still wanting to watch somebody stream, or maybe they just got on, and I can get a lot of the transition. And then if you make friends with any of those people, or anybody who's even a mid-level streamer, well, when they're done, they're just going to raid your channel with some people. You know, so like, why compete? Like, just get yourself an easier time slot. So same thing with you. Like, if you get on early, a bunch of those people aren't getting on the stream till like noon. You know, like you can beat them to the punch.
Now you bring up another good point. Competing. That's something that took me a long time to learn and get over. And I feel like maybe a lot of newer content creators think they are competing. And in a sense you are, but you really aren't competing, because it's really good to build that community of it. And the reason why it took me a long time to get out of it, because I competed in martial arts for a long time when I was a kid, up until mid to late 20s and all that. And when you're in like a sport like martial arts for so long, competing like that, it's so hard to get out of that mentality of everyone's against you, right? Because
Sweep the leg.
well, when you're in a fighting sport, that's all you're like trained for. You're trained to fight and all that, and so you think that person against you, like, oh, I gotta fight them and all that stuff. It's like, no, that and I love telling that to people to make sure they understand it's not a competition. You know, learn from the people that are bigger than you. You know, talk to them about it, see what they're doing right and what you're doing wrong, or talk to other people your level, mid-level, you know, just learn and understand and grow, and don't be afraid. Don't think it's all just one big competition.
Yeah, the biggest thing when I talk to people is when they're struggling, I'm asking them like, you're getting on at the same time as other people that have been doing this longer, and you're doing the exact same thing they're doing. Like, I get it. They research, they look at those people, they model their streams after them. But it's like, if you're just them, but with less notoriety, why is somebody going to watch you instead of them?
Yeah, who are you, you know?
Yeah. Like, that doesn't make any sense. So, like, do something to make yourself stand out. Like, even with me, with my channel points, like, they can spend them to, like, make me tell a bad joke. We do 2 truths and a lie. Like, I have just some ridiculous stuff in there. But
oh wait, you
can
edit those?
People gotten used to. Oh yeah, you can totally customize.
I had no idea. Shit.
But it's become part of like my channel brand, right? So people come in just to have fun and be goofy. Or
I might take some of your ideas, because I didn't know you could edit those. I just thought, because I have a shit ton of people just always do the highlight message one, and I'm thinking,
you can put, mine has like 12 things in there, I think.
Oh damn, I had no idea you could. I thought that was just it.
For all different levels, I have a thing that like somebody can spin.
I never changed mine.
I had no idea you could.
Have me critique their stream if they want me to. They can make me watch a video and get my reaction. They can, like, you know, all kinds of things. Just dumb things. I think your neighbor TJ has one that you can spend like 500 points to make them do 10 push-ups or whatever. You can do whatever you want.
Oh, that's great. I'm gonna take that idea. I like that.
Yeah, there's so much stuff you can do, but people don't touch any of that, right? And it's like that's how you get that engagement. The other thing I would tell people too is a lot of people tend to want to make friends with the bigger streamers, thinking that there's going to be some level of like clout rubbing off or something, right? And in theory, that's true. Like, if they were to raid you with a big enough raid, some percentage of them will hang around and you will get some new people, right? But the real issue, there's really 2 points. One is your content similar enough to theirs so their audience still wants to engage with you? Because if they have a whole different style, like a good example is Bloody is huge on Twitch, in the Magic Twitch. But like Bloody's audience isn't necessarily the same people that are my audience. So it's like, her rating me isn't necessarily going to be a great experience for her viewers.
Yeah.
Because we're just different personalities. Not that I have a problem with Bloody at all, but like we're just different personalities. Like she plays music, I don't. Like it's just going to be a different type of stream.
It'd be like me rating your like I play EDH and you're playing Arena. It's like why would my audience want to stick around watching Arena if they want to see the paper Magic?
Doesn't make sense. But what I did is I started finding other streamers at the same level I'm at. Some like 15 to 50 streamers per stream or viewers per stream. And that are on maybe a couple hours before me, a couple hours after me. We have a little bit of overlap and we just networked. And then what I've noticed is, because one of the things too, if you look at your Twitch stream manager, one of the things there, it'll show you the other channels that your viewers have in common. So you can see like, oh, well, some like 20% of my viewers also watch this person. So it's okay, cool. When I see that person on, I'll just go raid them and just be like, hey, I'm going to drop this people over here.
Yeah.
So they have a positive experience, even though like maybe the other 80% of my channel may not even know this person, but there's a reasonable chance they're going to enjoy it. So I've built relationships that way, and I'll go into somebody else's stream and I'll see some of my regulars, so it's pretty cool.
That's a good idea. Brian, what about you? I feel like we kind of left you in the dark there a little bit. How have you been doing during this pandemic? Are you you're not working for a newspaper right now, but you also mentioned you're a comedian too. Are you still actively? Well, I guess it's kind of hard to do that, like go to clubs or anything right now.
I mean, a lot of my friends have kind of started doing, like Zoom and Skype things, which I've looked into and haven't started anything along those lines yet. So I'm really just mainly doing Twitch, YouTube, and just kind of taking care of the family right now.
Okay. Are you currently working too right now or not?
Not right now. We're trying to figure, because again, one of the other main things I was doing was murder mysteries, and obviously we're not having a whole lot of those right now.
What do you mean murder mysteries?
Where you go to Dave and Buster's and somebody drops dead and you have to solve the mystery.
Oh, okay. I've never done one of those. They sound fun.
That's a classic job for hacky comedians and actors like myself. Taught defensive driving for a while, another classic hack comedian job, and of course you can't do that right now either because most restaurants are closed. And
so but
it's starting to come back.
No, that's good. So before the pandemic, were you doing a lot of comedy nights or anything, or stand-up nights?
Doing mostly open mics and then trying to get stuff worked out. Mostly doing and I even did a commercial for a lawyer a couple of years back. That was fun.
Oh dang!
I don't think it's still in rotation, but
that's so cool.
Hey, you got paid. So
yeah,
exactly. That's the most important thing. I didn't get paid $100,000 like I said I got paid. Spoiler alert. But
so is that like one of your aspirations, like be a bigger comedian?
Well, the crazy thing is, when I started as a journalist, you figure, okay, well, I do want to do comedy, but of course, you want to have a backup plan. Yeah. Crazy thing is, I picked newspaper journalism as my primary gig, so the backup plan turned out to be far more stable than the primary plan. I still act, I still do stand-up, I still do a podcast, but as I don't have a newspaper to work for anywhere.
Oh wow,
so that
was
crazy. It was the reverse of what I thought was going to happen. I figured I would probably still be writing and not be doing as much acting or stand-up, and it went complete opposite way because local newspapers, they just are not, how the economy is.
Yeah. I don't know. That's awesome though. So So you said you just mainly do open mics. Have you gotten any paid gigs or anything like that?
Oh yeah, I just have not been doing a whole lot of it lately, and
Well,
even
yeah,
before
yeah.
the pandemic was primarily doing the acting because that acting is okay. It's a set paycheck that you're going to get from doing that show.
That's awesome.
It was funny. It was funny. One night, somebody looked at me because in the second act, especially if the things are kind of running long, they'll start just cutting entire scenes because you're working around people's dinner, literally. And somebody turned to me and goes, "You haven't spoken in about 30 minutes." And then the writers told him he gets paid the same as everybody else. Like, there you go.
Nice, man.
As long as I get paid, I don't need all the jokes.
Nice. So the plan right now is just keep pushing away at like YouTube, Twitch, and all that. The podcast, comedy.
Definitely.
Hopefully, when it comes back.
Yeah, when it comes back, and we'll see how that. And if it's going away too long, I'm gonna probably start doing something on Zoom or Skype just to keep working through material. Because I'm sure some of it takes. If you see somebody doing an hour, it may have taken them 6 months or a year to get that 1 hour's worth of decent jokes.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of the comedian podcasts like Burt Kreischer, Bill Burr, Joe Rogan, and all that. It's I like hearing the behind the scenes stuff of comedians and all that stuff, and never understanding, just like you said, how hard and how long it can take just for someone to get an hour's worth of material.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
There are people that have won Last Comic Standing and couldn't tour right away because they had literally just gotten discovered and they didn't have an hour's worth of material yet because they're that fresh into the business.
Or they used all their good material on the show.
That too.
Oh, dang. That's a good point. What's the longest set you've ever done?
40 minutes, and I wasn't scheduled to do 40 minutes. The headliner did not show.
Oh,
and I had
dang.
booked the entire show, and so I ended up doing the headliner's time also. I'm not even going to tell you it was all funny because, again, I had no plans to do 40 minutes. It just
dang.
didn't call, didn't write, didn't apologize later, just didn't show up.
Oh, dang. Have you met any famous comedians or anything?
Yeah, I did a Comic View audition, which I didn't make it, but turns out that Steve Harvey was at the club, and if you were willing to take it, he would tell you what was wrong with your set. So it was a great experience. And he shared one of his stories where basically, like we talked about, he had just he did an HBO special, and he was great. Got paid well. Then he goes out, he's on the road doing a set, and nobody is laughing. And after about 4 or 5 minutes of nobody laughing, somebody stands with, "Look, Steve, we all love your comedy. We all watch your HBO special. Ain't you got any new jokes?" And no, because he never had an HBO special before, didn't realize he had to write all new jokes now.
Oh,
because everybody had heard
true.
all the other jokes he had.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
Which, if you've never done a TV special before, you probably don't know that.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. That's awesome. Has there been anyone else that you've met?
Oh, let me see. If you know Paul Varghese, who was on Last Comic Standing, and he works primarily out of the Dallas area, done a lot of events with him. I feel bad. I actually met Lewis Black, and that wasn't stand-up. I just happened to be on vacation in Vegas and saw Lewis Black sitting at the buffet, and just went up to him. And I didn't even tell him I was a comedian. I just wanted to, just talk to him and get a picture with him, basically.
Oh, that's awesome.
Because as he says in his act, his people are Jewish. They hunt buffets, and yeah, I actually did run into him at a buffet. So he's truth in comedy right there.
So you brought up Brainstorm Brewery. Jason Alt. He's a comedian, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah, that'd be funny. You two do like a little magic comedy special. So I don't know.
Me and DeQuan joked about doing like if he gets around to coming to Dallas for whenever we start having events again, taking him to the local comedy club, and like, hey, we have a whole magic theme set. What's the deal with Oko?
And get like one person laughing or something.
Oh yeah, exactly. There'd be two nerds in the back of the room going, "Man, this is lit," and other people going, like, "What the hell are they talking about?"
Though. This is the funniest stuff they've ever heard.
Oh my god, that'd be hilarious.
Al Franken calls that metal shop comedy. I think he actually got booked to do a metal convention, so he had to write a bunch of jokes for people that work in metal shops. And he knew he would never use any of these jokes ever again, but you had to work this gig and you had to get paid.
That's crazy. That's awesome though. That's awesome. Well, it's getting a little bit late on my side here. I just want to thank you both for coming on. It's been past 2 hours since we recorded, and it feels like it's flown by. I felt like we got some good talking done and talked about some good hard issues and some fun stuff as well too. Where can people both find you at if they want to reach out and follow you on the social medias and your podcast and all that?
You can always find me at Power Dragon on just about everything. It's POWRDRAGN. Or you can catch me streaming if you want on Twitch Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays, 9 p.m. to midnight Pacific time. But yeah, if you look up Power Dragon on pretty much all the social platforms, Twitch, YouTube, I'll pop up.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I am DL Caesar on Twitch, YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. And I also have a family-oriented channel, and that is Alan's Ever After. It's about, unlike DeQuan, I don't have a really set Twitch schedule yet, but definitely stop by. And
That's awesome. So, and what about the Color of Magic podcast? Where can people find that?
Yeah, you can just go to colorofmtg.com. However, if you want to just look it up on wherever you download your podcasts, we're on pretty much everything, but I think SoundCloud. Everything else, you can get it. So iTunes, Podbean, Buzzsprout.
Is it on Spotify?
Google Play. Yep, it's on Spotify.
All right, awesome.
I think even iHeartRadio, we have the RSS feed going over there. It's like you can get it almost every.
Once you put it in one place, everyone starts grabbing it.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for coming on. I really appreciate it. And thanks. Have a great night, you two.
Yeah, no problem, dude. Thanks for having us.
All right, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for listening to this week's episode. I hope you all really enjoyed it, and hope you really enjoyed the episode. The first hour was definitely where we talked about some hard stuff there, and then second hour was some more fun stuff, magic and baseball and fantasy sports and, what have you. So it was overall a really good episode. I really loved talking with those two guys. I had to cut it off at 2 hours because I felt like we could have just kept on going on and on and on. But sometimes 3-hour podcasts are not always the best, and 2 hours was a good stopping point. Felt it was a good stopping point. But I thank you both, DeQuan and Brian, for coming on. A really great time having you on the show. And yeah, definitely go check them out if you haven't already. If you're already not following them or listening to their content, they make some good stuff. And yeah, so thank you both for coming on, and thank you all for listening and watching, and have a great night. All right.